purpose of an understitch, let's say you have something that has a lining in it, or you're working on a neckline that has a facing. So for the sake of this, let's pretend this red fabric is my outer garment. It's a skirt or something that I'm making. And this black, the cherry fabric, would be my lining. So if I'm making something, this is the outside of my fabric, and then this black, we'll say, is my lining. And so I would sew the two pieces together. And then what I would do is go trim it a little bit. I wouldn't trim it a whole lot. And this really depends if I'm working with a pattern that has a standard 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, okay? So before I do my understitching, what I would do would be to trim it and probably cut it down to about 1/4 of an inch. Okay, and then to do my understitch, I would go to my ironing board, but I'm not going to for the sake of this, for the video. So this is the outside of my fabric. This is my lining. What I'll do, I'll turn it over so you can both see what we're doing. This is the outside, this is the lining. To understitch, you want to turn your seam allowance toward your lining or toward your facing, depending on what you're making. So you press your seam allowance toward the lining or toward the facing. And then you would sew this lining, you're gonna sew it to this seam allowance here. And what I do when I am sewing it is I pull it apart a bit. Right, I just understitched. I sewed my lining to my excess seam allowance here. So this would be an understitch. So this is my lining, this is the outside of my garment. And then for my top stitch, what I would do is fold it. And even if you don't have a facing, your top stitch is a stitch that is basically, think of it as sort of a decorative stitch that's along the outside. You don't have to have a top stitch. It's optional, but you know, sometimes depending upon what you're doing, it gives your garment a more finished look. And for the sake of this, if this is a pocket, it will help to keep this nice and flat. What I tend to do when I top stitch is I increase my stitch length. So if my normal stitch length is 2.2 on this machine, I go up to about a 2.8 because I want a little longer stitch. I'm going to use my presser foot as my guide. So I'm keeping the edge of my presser foot along the edge of my fabric, and that ensures that I have a straight line. And this would be my top stitch. Top stitch is on top. This is my finished garment. My top stitch will be showing on the outside versus the understitch, which is underneath. It's on the lining or the facing, and it isn't seen on the outside of my garment.